Hi everyone. Have you ever wanted to solve a cryptic crossword but never learned how? Now is your chance. My name is Jaffe and I'll be teaching you how to solve cryptic crosswords from scratch. This is a two-part tutorial. In the first part, we'll be looking at types of cryptic clues and types of wordplay that are involved with examples. And in the second part, we're going to look at an actual crossword and solve it one clue at a time. So if you don't know, cryptic crosswords started out in the UK in the 1920s, so almost 100 years old. And the current rules, the rules as we know that today, were pretty much codified by the 1966 book Ximenes and the Art of the Crossword. And they're pretty popular in the UK and in the Commonwealth countries, but you can find them in America and indeed in some other non-English languages as well. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to bring out my whiteboard and I'm going to put some clues on and explain what kind of different clue types we have and how to solve them. But first, let's look at what a non-cryptic, like standard crossword clue looks like. So this is what you might see in a non-cryptic standard crossword: pointed wooden post. And the answer to this might be steak. Now, a cryptic clue for with the same answer might look something completely different. And it might look something like this: financial institutions accept a blank check finally. Now, you see a couple of differences immediately. One difference is, which you can see in some standard crosswords as well, but is definitely the standard in cryptics, is you have these numbers after the clue, which indicates the length of the answer. And not just how many letters it is, but also this 5 means that it's one word of 5 letters. If it was 2 words, it might be something like 2, 3, or with a comma, meaning that it's one word of 2 letters and then another word of 3 letters. You might also see punctuation, like if it's a hyphenated word, 2-3 might indicate it's 2 letters, then a hyphen, and then 3 letters. So the sort of length and the punctuation of the answer is given there. The other thing, if you haven't done any cryptics, you might notice that when you read the clue, it doesn't bear any relevance to the word steak, and it is often the case. You see the answer, and you don't see how on earth are you supposed to make out steak from these. This means financial institutions, banks, something like that. It doesn't have anything to do with that, blank checks. And yeah, that's why it's important to know the rules. And once you do get the hang of them, there are a lot of them. It's like a steeper process than with normal uh, crosswords, but it's also more rewarding. Gives a lot more opportunities as well. So I'm going to leave this clue here. I will explain it later, but if you want to try to figure out why this is steak, I'm going to leave it here for a bit. But the other reason I wanted to show the sort of the standard crossword clue here is a part like this exists in every cryptic crossword clue as well. We call it the definition. So something, if you look up the answer, look up the word steak in a dictionary, you might see something like that: pointed wooden post. That is one of the definitions. The steak has many meanings. It can be a verb, it can be a noun, but one of the meanings in the dictionary might be something like that. And a cryptic clue also always has a definition, something that explains the answer in terms of its meaning. What the answer that we're looking for, what is its meaning? Now, in addition to that, the second part, the other part of the cryptic clue, is wordplay. And wordplay can be a lot of different things, but basically cluing the same word in a way that doesn't involve its meaning. So it might be letters, other words, sounds, So scrambling letters, picking letters from other words, um, sound alike words, so changing words that sound, switching between words that sound alike, reversing the order in which you read, and those kinds of things. We'll go through them one by one, and I have some examples of each. But the first sort of type of cryptic clue I wanted to touch here actually doesn't involve wordplay, and that's why it's maybe the simplest to take first here. So I'll put a clue here on the whiteboard. I'll leave these at the top. So this is a cryptic clue and also with the same answer, stake. This is a word that we're going to use quite a few times because it's just a handy word for an example purpose. But this is a double definition clue, so it has a definition and a second definition for the word stake. So this is pretty common. You see these in crosswords. The thing to remember is uh, it has to have two different meanings. So it can't just be cluing the same thing twice. So you're going to have a definition for the word stake as something, and then the word stake as something else. So for example, here we have this is where the clue breaks up. So we have one definition on this side, and we have another definition on this side. So a piece of wood, like here we had pointed wooden post, a stake, one definition is it's a piece of wood. The other definition is here, provide money for, and that's as a noun, as a verb. So if you provide money for someone, for some purpose, you stake them. To stake someone is to provide money for them. So two different meanings for the same word, that's a double definition. You might sometimes see some connector word here in the middle. Here we don't have any, but there might be some word like and or for or something like that, connecting the two parts. And there are very limited like words that can be used in that purpose. But other than that, every word in a cryptic clue has to serve some meaning. So if you think you have a solution for a clue that only uses these words, chances are that is actually wrong because you cannot have just extraneous words in a cryptic clue. So that is double definition. Sometimes you see, which is pretty non-standard, but you do sometimes see triple definitions, just putting a third definition there, or even more, but that is really rare. But double definition is definitely a standard type of clue. Now let's, once we know what double definitions are, maybe we'll move on to actual wordplay. And the simplest form of wordplay is what they call charades. Just putting a clue up here. Charades means just you clue one word and then another word, and you just put those together. Sometimes multiple words, and you put them all together. So this is a different word. It's not stake. Stake isn't exactly a good word to clue as charades, but we have was in charge of ruler's position. And here the definition is at the end. And the definition part is always either at the very end or at the beginning. It's never in the middle. And this is the wordplay part. Was in charge of ruler. So was in charge of, if you can find a synonym for that, well, one synonym is ran. You ran a group, you were in charge of a group. And a ruler is a king is a ruler. You put those together, you get ranking, a position, like your ranking in an organization, your position. So no further manipulation needed. Just take two words, put them together. That's a charade clue. Very simple. At least this example was simple. You can have pretty complicated charade clues as well, and pretty difficult ones. Now that didn't need any manipulation other than just finding synonyms. But when you do need some manipulation, we'll look at anagrams next, which is taking letters and putting them in a different order. And this is an anagram, very simple anagram clue. Again, for the word stake, S-T-A-K-E. So here the definition is at the start, share. So shared cooked steak. And you might think share doesn't mean steak. Well, actually, it is a synonym of steak as a noun. Your share in a company, your stake in a company. And this brings me to two things. First of all, the definition um, doesn't have to be the word you think it is when you read the clue as a when you normally read the clue. So you normally read this as share cooked steak. So share is the verb, what you do, and you share something, and what you share is a cooked steak. That is called the surface reading, like how you would read this as a normal sentence if you didn't know it was a cryptic clue. The surface reading often has no relevance to how you need to solve it and how you need to read the words. So if here, for example, you needed to treat this share as a noun to make it out as a definition for steak. But the definition does have to agree with the answer. If you have a plural definition, you're going to need a plural answer. Also, if you have a past tense definition, the answer is going to be past tense as well. And also conjugation, things like that. If you have an ing form of a verb in the definition, it's going to be the same form in the answer as well. So that was the one point we see here. The other point, we can kind of see this, that these are the letters that we need for the word stake, S-T-A-K-E. But we have an extra word here, and this brings me to indicators, which is a very important concept that we'll be using constantly here. So an indicator is a word in the clue that shows you what kind of operation you need to do to the other words. So cooked, for example, can mean mix up the letters. Anagram, the word steak, because you cook some ingredients, you mix them together, you prepare them some way. Anagramming, mixing of letters, has tons of different ways it can be indicated. So anything related to movement or disorganization, or conversely reorganizing or rebuilding something, or something that is crazy or unexpected, or something like that, that shows you that uncertain. All those kinds of words can mean you have to anagram one of the surrounding words, or indeed it can be several words. You can have very long anagrams, several words, and you have to take all those letters and anagram them. But this is pretty much as easy as simple as the anagram clues go. And we'll see more maybe difficult ones when we look at an actual crossword. So let's look at another thing, operation that we can do to the surrounding words. And this is now, so the clue is share some meat in broadcast. And here we have again share is the definition as before. And in broadcast is now an indicator, and that indicates finding a sound-alike word. So a word that means the same, that sounds the same, but is spelled differently. So for example, here we have some meat. So we have to find a word for some meat, find a homophone for it that means share. Well, some meat can be steak, spelled like this, and its homophone is steak. And again, as a noun, share, a share is a steak. So in broadcast is the should, when you see in broadcast or something referring to hearing, you might see on the telephone, on the radio, or reportedly, or as we hear, something like that. Those kinds of indicators show you that you need to take a homophone. You have to take a word that sounds the same. Also, we know from the structure of the clue, by the way, we know that this is the right direction. So we are not supposed to take the word steak, S-T-A-K-E, and turn it to steak, S-T-E-A-K, because if we did that, then the definition would be in the center, would be in the middle, and then the wordplay part would be here and also here, and you cannot do that. You have to have some divider, one side of one side of which is the definition, and the other side the wordplay. So here the divider should be here, and this is the definition, share, and this, all the rest is wordplay. So that's sound-alike clues. Another very common thing, maybe not as itself as here, but to be used in a clue is reversal. You take something and you reverse it. And that can be indicated, for example, in this clue, whip back for sport. Now the answer is different now, because this word steak backwards doesn't mean anything, so I can't use that. Whip back for sport. Now back here can actually doesn't always mean backwards, but here it means backwards. Other things that can clue that take a word and reverse it, or whatever you have and reverse it, can mean returning, coming back, or if it's an across clue, it could be from the right, or if it's a down clue, it could be climbing or up, because you have to write it upwards. So anything that indicates direction, like the reverse direction that you would normally use. So here, back basically means you have to take a word that means whip, and for is a connector. Now you can't really, you can use a connector for between the wordplay and the definition. So that indicates that this is going to be the definition. We do something for an answer that means sport. So we need a word that means whip, and when we reverse it, it means some kind of sport. Well, flog can mean whip, and you reverse that, it's golf, it's a sport. Now, you can see clues like this, where it's just take whatever you have and reverse it, but often it's part of something bigger, because you can use multiple things in a clue. So you can have an anagram, and then you have a reversal of something, and you put them all together and you get an answer, or something like that. So reversal is one of those things that doesn't have to be on its own. It can be part of something else as well. Now I wanted to talk about hidden words. Now let's just put out the clue. So a hidden word is another type of wordplay that we can use. We can see in a cryptic crossword, and it's actually pretty common. All of these that we've gone through are pretty common, and we'll go through some of the ones that are not that common in the end. But a hidden word is just taking some part of a longer string, and that is the answer, literally. Like for example, here we had part, which indicates you take a part of the preceding words, not all of them. And indeed, if you take a part of these words lost a key, you find the word stake there. And to find someone is to stake them. You stake someone, you provide them with money. So this is pretty easy clue type to sort of see, at least for me, much easier than some of the other ones. But they can be sometimes tricky as well. Um, Also, hidden word is usually on its own. You don't see it uh, combined with other types. You don't see like a small part hidden and then some other letters coming from somewhere else. It's either the whole thing, or it can be the whole thing reversed. So you can use, if you have a reversal indicator there, it can be a reversal or reversed hidden. But other than that, hidden clues are going to be so mm, not part of anything bigger. It's just hidden if it is a hidden. And this type of clue you can recognize by an indicator that means like not entirely, so portion, piece, some, or it can be something that means something is inside, so in, during, or caught by, or it could be something that indicating that something is breaking up the bigger part, so dividing or breaking or cutting, something like that. Those can all indicate a hidden word. So that's relatively straightforward, and all of these clues actually try to make them so that it's pretty simple to see, but they're actually uh, generally the clues are going to be much harder because when you do a cryptic crossword, the sort of the idea is that it's the setter is going to try to trip you up some way, somehow mislead you. Um, so now we have a couple of wordplay components that are still uh, pretty widely used. But maybe now we'll go back to the first clue that we showed you. I'll just copy it here again. And now this is a type of clue that is, and congratulations if you saw where the word steak comes from there. It's a letter selection clue. So the definition is at the start, and the indicator here is finally. If you see a word like finally, it means final letters. So here, if we select the final letters, here S, T, A, K, E, we get the word steak. Uh, other indicators that can show that are something like at last, or ends, or tails, or if it's an across clue, it might be rights, as in the rightmost letters, or if it's a down clue, it might be something like bottoms or feet, something that means the end of something. You also see um, selecting first letters, which is very common. The first letter can be the head or the front or the top, if it's an up clue or down clue, the top. And sometimes you even see creative things like selecting second letters, seconds, or something like that. And then I actually have a separate example of selecting regular letters. So here we have a clue which is selecting regular letters, and regularly here is the key word here. So thank me regularly for investment. So regularly means pick every other letter, and if we take every other letter here, we get S, T, A, K, E, and your stake is your investment. So stake as a noun there. Other words that can mean take every second letter. You might see evens or odds or evenly, oddly, or you might even see something more creative like oddly ignored, like take the odd letters out, things like that. So all those things are selecting letters from the words in the clue. And both of these examples are like whole, like you just take this one indicator and apply it to all of these. But it doesn't have to be. It could just be um, select the last letter of this, and then the rest comes from completely different wordplay. So this letter selection is very often used in combination with other clues, other clue types, I should say, other wordplay types. Mm, we should talk also about positioning. So anytime you see a word, let's put a clue here. Anytime you see a word that means positioning something in relation to the other thing, like for example here after end of discussions, accept wager. Whenever you see a word like that, it usually means it indicates the order of the parts. So if you see after here, that's a very sort of common or likely part to be wordplay. So you might immediately look at the end to see the definition. And here the definition is wager, your stake in the pot, the amount of money you bet is your wager, your stake. So um, here after just says that end of discussions, that's the S here. So as we just saw, select a letter from that word, and after that you put another word. To accept, well, if you accept something, you take it. So S plus take gives you the answer stake. Now, obviously, hereafter doesn't actually do anything because even without that, the take would be after the S, but it can be before, it can be between, and you can change the order. You might see west of, meaning to the left of, or if it's a down clue, you might see north of something, or above, or on top of, also meaning in a down clue meaning before the other thing. So those kinds of words are often used to indicate the ordering of different parts in the wordplay. Now, when we look at this, we see that we use the individual letter here. Now, often in cryptic crosswords, you're going to need some abbreviations, some knowledge of abbreviations. For example, we might have the same type of clue written like this: provide funding for small profit. Now, I think you can come up with a one-letter abbreviations for small. If you think of clothing sizes, small is S. So that is the S here, and your profit is your take, what you're taking. So take can mean profit. So provide funding for is the definition, and answer again is take as a verb. And when you do cryptic crosswords, there are going to be some abbreviations that repeat that you sort of get the hang of, and pretty much anything that is in the dictionary so can be used. So if you look up the letter S in the dictionary, you might see one definition being that it's an abbreviation for small. So anything like that can be used in cryptic crosswords, and sometimes you see things that you only know from crosswords, especially for me because I do sometimes the British crosswords and I'm not British, and there are some uh, probably common abbreviations for British people that I don't know, but I just have to look them up to be able to understand how the clue works. So if there's a word like soldiers in the clue, and I see that it should be RE based on the answer, then I'm just gonna have to look up RE, what that is. It's Royal, is it engineers, something like that. So very important for understanding the sort of parsing of the clues to know these little abbreviations. Um, Now we have sort of one or two, yeah, two actually. So we have insertion and deletion as the sort of last wordplay types that are commonly used. And after that, we're going to move into stuff that you kind of might see sometimes, but not as often, not as frequently. So insertion is placing one component inside another. So here we have share. Again, share used as the definition. We've done it previously many times. Share here. So that's steak. Alcoholic drink containing a bit of taurine. Now a bit of, if you see a thing like that, it's not all of this word. So you take the first bit of it, the T, and that is contained in, that is inside a word for alcoholic drink. Well, sake is an alcoholic drink, so if you take the word sake and you put the T inside it, you get steak, which is the answer. And this containing is the obviously the indicator there. It can be in or inside, or as with the hidden word clues, it can be something like broken by or divided by, or or it can be something stolen. So alcoholic drink stealing a bit of taurine, if that made any sense. But something like stealing or taking could be an indicator for insertion. And obviously we can do the opposite as well. So we can take the word steak and remove the T to get an answer sake. Or here we have another example of removal. So comedian Ben Stones wanting to be less healthy. And again, one of the types of clues where if you don't know how cryptics work, you might look up Ben Stone and realize that there is no comedian named Ben Stone, and you're like wondering how you could ever solve that. But actually, this is comedian Ben Stiller. So you take the word Stiller, and then you remove something from it. If something is missing, it's wanting. And why is this ST? So the answer is less healthy. Iller is the answer. So we take the ST out. Now, why is ST stone? If you look up ST in the dictionary, that is an abbreviation for stone, as in a unit of weight. In Britain, they measure their weight in stones. So ST is therefore valid for stone. So stone is wanting from the word stealer. You get iller, less healthy. Now, we are going to go through some wordplay components that are not all that common, but you might still come across them. But these are really the types that you come across in every crossword, basically. And one more thing to note, as we said before, that these can all be combined. So you can have an anagram with an insertion, you insert something there, and you can have all kinds of combinations. There are a few ones that aren't allowed, like hidden words are always just the entire thing is hidden. It can be reversed, but that's the only thing that you're going to see. That's in addition to being a hidden word. Often homophones are complete, that you only need to do the homophone, but sometimes they are combined. Sometimes you have one homophone and then some other stuff as well. But let's look at some of the maybe less commonly used wordplay. So here we have, I'm just going to put a divider here. So here we have a clue that says share. Again, share. You might notice before we've used it. Share, share. So that's the definition. Piece of meat, leaving middle part for later. Now this is a clue type where you move one letter somewhere inside the other, inside a different word. Inside a word to create a different word. Sorry, that was a weird way to say it. So we have a word for piece of meat, and we've used this before, the steak. And if you leave the middle part for later, so this is the middle part of a word, the word steak. And if you leave that for later, if you push this back a bit, it goes to the end and you get the word steak. And this might be something like indicated. Obviously, this is a non-standard indicator, leaving something for later, but it could be something simpler like moving west, center moving west, or moving up, or coming moving towards the front, or something like that, meaning that a letter is moving, or a part of the word is moving in some direction. You can also see swapping, two letters swapping places, like you might have the word skate and then these letters just swapping places. That you sometimes see that, but not very often. Then there's another type that's even rarer. It's called cycling. After cycling, accepts interest. Now we used accept before, I think. Accept for take here. This is accepts, so it's takes. And you cycle this. So cycling just means taking letters from one end of the clue, one end of the word to the other. So here we take the S and we move it all the way to the front, and we get steak. And this is only really clued by the word cycling or cycled. I don't think I've ever seen it clued by indicated by anything else. Then one more thing you can sometimes see is spoonerism, and that's almost always either the word spooner or sometimes reverend, for Reverend William Spooner, who was famous for mixing up his words. So a spoonerism is two words whose starting letters or starting sounds have been exchanged. So for example, here we have chill. Chill is cold. I should read the clue. Vacation spot for Spooner's chill spirit. So chill is cold. A spirit is a ghost. You spoonerize cold ghost, you get Gold Coast, which is a vacation spot. So that's how spoonerism works. You just swap the beginnings of two words. And yeah, pretty much always with this spooners indicator. Now, the next type of wordplay you don't see that often, and it's kind of breaks the rules a little bit in that all of the other clue types you have two ways of getting the answer: the definition and the wordplay. But there's a clue type called cryptic definition, and that's just a definition that you have to read in a strange way to get the answer. But you don't have any other part to solve. If you can't get it, you can't get it, and often they are pretty tricky, but do make sense once you know the answer and you realize how you should read the clue. So, for example, we have number of the beast, and here we have a question mark actually. So question mark can mean that something in the clue has to be interpreted in some questionable way. So here, this is obviously a long answer, 6 letters and 13 letters. The answer is animal tranquilizer, and it doesn't make any sense why that would be the number of the beast. until you realize that this can be read as a number, something that numbs the beast, the animal, is the animal tranquilizer. I don't like using clues like this myself. I like to put some wordplay, even if I have a definition like this, put some simple wordplay there, just to give the solver a little more uh, possibility to find the answer. But you do see this in crosswords with just a definition that has to be read in a weird way. Now another thing that question mark can indicate, obviously can be indicate something that something is sort of needs to be read in a weird way, but it can also indicate a definition by example. Now, a definition by example is something that normally your definition is like a synonym or a description of the thing that of the answer, but you can use you do sometimes see examples of uh, the answer being the definition. For example, you might have something like this: chimpanzees may be tossed peas. Now, tossed is an anagram indicator, like a tossed salad. You mix it up, you mix this up, you get apes. And this maybe here indicates that chimpanzees are not the only apes that exist, that apes might be something else, but they can be chimpanzees. So chimpanzees are an example. So that's a definition by example. And this can be indicated by maybe or for example. It's a very direct way of saying it, or perhaps, or chimpanzees say, or it can be just a question mark at the end of this definition. Oops. So you sometimes see that used, the question mark used for that purpose as well. Now the final type of clue really, which can be pretty much any of the aforementioned wordplay types, uh, but there's also a type of clue that doesn't contain a sort of divider between definition and wordplay. And here is an example of such a clue. Francis's first Oscar-winning film. Now this is what we call an and lit clue, and it's usually written like this, and lit. It means and literally so. So this is a word, the clue type where the whole thing is the definition, and you have to read the whole thing again for the wordplay. So for example, here the answer is Fargo. And why this is the definition for Fargo? Well, Fargo is a film starring Frances McDormand, and it was her first Oscar-winning film, very simply. But in order for this to make sense as a cryptic clue, you also need this to be read as a wordplay. So how is this wordplay for Fargo? Francis's first is F, this F here, and Argo is an Oscar-winning film by Ben Affleck, Argo. So F, you put F and Argo together, you get Fargo. So that's the wordplay. So this is a type of clue you sometimes see, and yeah, it's maybe hard to spot this. Comes with example because it's not like there's an indicator that says that this is an antlit. Sometimes you see an exclamation point used to show that this is an antlit clue, but exclamation points can be used for other purposes. It can be just for the surface reading, so it doesn't necessarily mean. But some I think some publications require this in an antlit clue, this exclamation point. I don't use them myself, so if you're solving my crossword, you're out of luck. But yeah, this is a clue type that's pretty rare, not because there's anything wrong with it, it's just hard to make because everything has to serve two purposes. But yeah, you see those sometimes as well. Now I wanted to those are all the basic wordplay types that I wanted to discuss. I wanted to put in a word for about misdirection. So obviously, many of these examples were really simple. In actual cryptic crosswords, you're going to have a lot of misdirection in the sense that uh, the setter is going to word the clue in a way that naturally reads a certain way, but you have to ignore that and read it in another way in order to find the answer. We had a sort of an example here, like in share, like share is in the surface reading is it's a verb and you need to read it as a noun. There are much trickier examples as well, like if you have a, it might you might need to read a certain word with a different pronunciation, like you might have a um, surface reading about fighting and it has the word row, but for the wordplay you need it to be row, which is spelled the same. Or you might have the word Polish referring to European people, but you for the wordplay you might need to read that as Polish. Or like a stereotypical example is the word flower, which is sometimes used in cryptics in a sense that doesn't exist in the real world, which is flower, something that flows, which kind of makes sense. Like you put an er ending to a verb, a flower is something that flows, and that often means a river, even though in the real world you don't see anyone saying, "Yeah, I live by a flower there." It's not used like that, but in cryptics it sometimes is. Also, often you see phrases that naturally belong together, uh, which have to be split up in order to make the cryptic reading work. Did we have an example of that? Like finance institutions here. Like a natural phrase meaning banks or something like that, but in fact you have to read finance separately, that's the definition, and institutions is part of the wordplay. Um, yeah, so you will see examples of those things in part two. In part two, we are going to go through an entire crossword that I made, and I tried to include, or at least all the sort of common types of wordplay there. I didn't quite get all the weird stuff, but it should be something that is representative of solving cryptic crosswords, and we'll go through that in part two. But I think for part one, this is all for me, and I will see you in part two. Thanks.